All right, we're back, and it is time for the segment that is actually potentially really, truly sweeping the nation here. It is our Dynasty Debates. Let's get into it. All right, like I mentioned last week, you guys absolutely crushed it from a mailbag perspective. Fantasy mailbag at yahoosports.com. Send in your Dynasty Debates there. We will talk about the best ones here on the show. We still have a ton to get into, but we'd love to hear more from you guys. So again, fantasy mailbag at yahoosports.com. It can be, player specific, players versus players. We'll get into a ton here. Let's get to the first one on Zay Flowers. Miles sends this in. Please help me out. Zay Flowers has to be the most frustrating wide receiver for me to roster in Dynasty. Week to week, his production is unpredictable. He's an undersized vertical weapon in offense with low overall pass volume, which caps his target ceiling. Also struggles to score touchdowns, largely because Lamar Jackson prefers throwing to his tight ends in the red zone. As a result, it's hard to ever feel confident starting him, and yet despite all that, Flowers finished as the wide receiver 7. He began the season as an analytics darling. His RP profile confirms the talent is real. He consistently wins on his routes and separates at a high level. So the question becomes, how should dynasty managers actually value him? Is Zay Flowers a replaceable asset whose value should be cashed out for an upside rookie pick while the market is still somewhat high? Or is this a situation where you accept production, trust the underlying talent, and hope for a usage shift or a true JSN level breakout at some point? Curious where you land on him long-term after this season and with an upcoming coaching change. Yeah, that coaching change will be interesting to consider here, Boone, but what's your overall thoughts on Zay Flowers and some of what Miles had to say?
Well, I don't see him having a JSN type ceiling, but I think we could go back to the Rashad Bateman conversation a bit where we talked about the Ravens offense as a whole. They weren't themselves this year, right? It didn't hit anywhere near what they had done in recent years. So I think we can give them a bit of a break for what happened this season, but still the fact that Flowers finally started to find the end zone, that was huge, right? That was the thing kind of missing for him. So to score a couple more touchdowns, to end up putting up a year like this in a season where the offense had its struggles, I think that's really good. Now, if you can get like top 10, top 12 value in exchange for him in a trade, I would do that. I don't think he's going to end up being like a wide receiver 1, long term. I think he's more of a wide receiver 2, a guy that you feel good about having in your lineup, a guy who's going to have some spiked weeks. But no, I don't think he has like that elite ceiling in him. Do you see it differently?
No, I think we pretty much see it the same. I don't know what the fake news market has to say about him, but I've got him as like wide receiver 26 in my dynasty rankings because I agree with you. Like, I think you can, if that's what you want, you can just sit on that production and he probably gives you, what he's given you the last few years consistently. But I also think he's the type of player, because I try to do this more on like a talent basis, what I think about players, because situations change so quickly on a year-to-year basis, even, especially over the course of like 3 to 4 years. It's hard to project going forward. And I just don't think that Flowers is the type of guy that is a true number 1 receiver in the NFL. I think he's really, really good, but I see him more ideally as a 2, similar to, I think Devontae Smith is a better player. I think George Pickens, I think T. Higgins, those type are better. Jalen Waddle, I think, is kind of maybe comparable player to Zay Flowers, but I think coming back to the Bateman thing, I think the Ravens actually would be better to think about like adding a number 1 wide receiver to this mix and maybe slot everybody back down into more comfortable roles. So no, I think we can move on from this one because we generally see this one the same. Let's get to this next one. Comes in from Harry Evans. Hey guys, Happy New Year. Oh man, January 14th, New Year. Harry sent, in fairness to Harry, he sent this in a long time ago, I believe. So it's fine to be still saying Happy New Year when you sent this in. I would not be wishing anybody a Happy New Year on January 14th. Anyways, back to the question. Hey guys, Happy New Year. Whenever Kaleb Johnson comes up on a podcast, people laugh and make jokes. They call him dead, then they move on. But he was also a highly touted, highly productive college player, expected to do a lot. Maybe he just sucks. But on the other hand, we have old man Rodgers known for demanding his chosen players and then a rookie. Maybe he struggled pass blocking, got shut down. The Steelers invested in this guy and he has talent. Am I crazy to think he could surprise everyone and become a thing next year? Thanks. I know Harry is so right. Whenever we bring up Kaleb Johnson, it's like, oh my God, remember Kaleb Johnson? But it's probably worth like investigating and thinking about, even though he had this horrendous rookie season as we're showing here on the screen. Is there anything more to Kaleb Johnson, or are you pretty happy just completely like moving him out of your mind here?
I don't know about this one. Like when a running back face plants as bad as he did this year, oh, it's time to worry normally. Like in Dynasty, that's not often a situation that you want to involve yourself in. You normally see a little bit of something, especially in a backfield where there should have been opportunity this year. And even when there were injuries, they really didn't boost his workload at all, right? It was just like, all right, Kenny Gainwell gets everything now. That's not a great sign. Now, there's going to be a coaching change. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing either, because a new coaching staff's not going to have any ties to him necessarily. So it's just a crapshoot at that point, and it's not really a spot where I want to invest in for Dynasty. So I don't feel good about it. I would look at him just like a lottery ticket pick, and if you spent a late first, early second to get him, which is where he was going in rookie drafts last year, you're probably going to hold because you are not going to get anything back in a trade for him right now. So it's a tough situation, and one where I'm not going to take pennies in return for him, but I don't have a lot of faith that he is going to come through and have a big fantasy future.
Yeah, I think you speculatively hold him through the offseason. But yeah, you're right that Harry, that Rodgers obviously known for demanding. He clearly, his favorite players, Kenny Gainwell was his favorite player this year. But you made a great point there, Boone. The coaching change, one of the reasons to be optimistic about Kaleb Johnson when he got drafted by the Steelers in the third round was he got drafted to Arthur Smith's like very heavy zone scheme, which fit him very well. Arthur Smith is not going to be the offensive coordinator for the 2026 Pittsburgh Steelers. So that is yet another kind of anti-check mark in his future outlook here. So definitely concerning. Maybe we don't need to make jokes and laugh. Keep, like, again, speculatively holding through the offseason, but I'm with Boone that I think the odds he becomes a fantasy factor are pretty low. Anything else on this one, or should we move on?
I was just going to say he's a third round pick too, right? Like in real life, it's not like he was a first round pick or something. It's not like he had incredible draft capital. Third round's good, but it's not like they can't just move on from him if they wanted to. And I think that's what we're going to see happen. They're going to have to bring somebody else in there probably. I think the odds of him coming through for fantasy are pretty slim.
All right, let's get to this next one. This one's actually from social media submitted. This next one here comes in from, we're going to call it Chuck. This one here. Given the flattened wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 production and the increased emphasis on run game, should I start trading off my wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 big names for running back starter depth? In other words, will roster builds skew RB heavy now? I think this is a good question. I kind of hinted at this earlier in one of the questions, or one of the things we talked about, that the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 scoring on a per game basis has been down the last few years. I was tweeting about this with Ryan Heath earlier. People can think last week. People can find that on my Twitter feed. Yapped about it a little bit there. Yapped about it on an episode of Reception Perception too, like some of my overall theories on it. But let's just note that is a thing that has happened these last 2 years. The kind of consensus idea about dynasty roster building, Boone, I don't know how you feel about this, but you want to build around wide receivers because they're more stable, year to year. That's kind of was even friggin' 10 years ago doing dynasty content. That's sort of the mainstream thought. Do you think we need to shift our focus on that, or are you going to continue, or do you build your dynasty teams around wide receivers over running backs?
I don't think that people should really change what they're doing. I think this will come back around. And I agree that, I do think that you should be building around strong, young wide receivers. But also, we're trying to find those elite profiles, right? I know that seems obvious to say, but for me, the idea is spend your early startup picks trying to get these younger, talented wideouts who can be the core of your team for a long time. And it's not just because they could have these longer careers than running backs. It's also because I want to have a lot of bench spots to spend on running back, right? So I want to get younger, elite receivers and not roster that many receivers. I want to roster as few receivers as possible, to be honest. And you're going to hate to hear that, of course, but I want to do that because I think it's harder, deeper in drafts. I think, and maybe not for you, but I think for most people, it's harder to find these really deep receivers that are going to emerge and become stars on your team, right? They might emerge and become guys that you could put in your flex or something like that. But it's hard to really dig up those guys that are going to become top 10, top 20 guys and get them late in rookie drafts or late in your startup. So the goal for me, it's more about roster build, taking elite receivers, trying to get them young, kind of doing the same with quarterback. And then my whole goal after that is you can trade for running backs. When the rest of your roster looks pretty good, that's when I go make a move to get even a veteran running back potentially, because we know veterans you can get cheaper in Dynasty. Backfill at running back like that. That's what I want to do. I think it's really important because most of the leagues I play in are super flex. I will also say most of the Dynasty leagues I play in are PPR. So that's why I'm looking at receivers and I'm looking at quarterbacks as the core of my team. Tight ends, if you can find one along the way, great. If not, you can work the waiver wire. Unless you're in like a really deep league, 14 teams. I talk about being in some of those, right? Like 34-man rosters. Mm-hmm. Sure, there's nothing on the waiver wire in those. But in like regular analyst dynasty leagues, 12 teams, 20-something spots on your roster, I've picked up guys like George Kittle in his rookie year, was either dropped or not drafted. And it's because George Kittle, now we remember him being this star player. But when he was coming out, he was no sure thing. Guys like Jake Ferguson, guys like Juwan Johnson, you can find guys on the waiver wire that it doesn't seem like it because now we look at them, we go, those guys are starters, they're productive. But at times they have been available even in analyst dynasty leagues for me. So I'm trying to like dig and find tight ends that way. And then for running back, I'm just trying to get as many as I can on my roster and hope that I hit on a few, but also have all those bench spots available to put those guys that 1 injury, 2 injuries, and all of a sudden they can be those spot starters for a few weeks or maybe for the rest of the season if the starter on their team goes out completely. So that's kind of how I view it. I hope that answers the question. That I think over the long term, to me, it seems like it's going to come back around. I don't think you should completely, shift to just being running back heavy in terms of the top of your roster. I don't know if you feel differently though, especially being a guy who's very pro wide receiver.
No, I think that's a great breakdown. And part of the thing that I was going to say was I think that wide receiver 2-3 bucket is so crowded that you could potentially look at guys, like I know Jordan Addison is in the news for, some another legal issue that he has right now, but he's a great example of a guy that is just like will never be that superstar player. He'll just always kind of at best be a wide receiver too. So if you can, again, maybe tough right now, just the example that came to my head, but you could trade him for like a usable running back piece. I'm totally willing to cycle those pieces out. The guys who don't have access to be that next superstar necessarily for both talent and opportunity reasons. I think that's a great thing to point out. And then you mentioned in the rookie draft, and I actually struggle with this, Boone, because I like wide receivers and feel like I do know the position so well that, I'm always trying to get some of the guys that I really like. And this is a good example of a player this past year from my rookie draft. Jack Besh is a guy I took in the second round. I think maybe Besh ends up being fine, but is he going to end up being a fantasy difference maker? I don't know about that, when I probably should have just taken like a Cam Scatterbo type in the second round, because there are odds where, Scatterbo is a 4th round running back, and obviously he ended up being really good before he got hurt, but that wasn't a guarantee necessarily. Easy to say that in hindsight, but the odds that Scatterbo is going to help my fantasy team are a lot higher than Jack Besh on the damn Raiders, with even if he ends up being a good player, which we don't know, but that's like kind of a practical example of it there.
Not that it's like this every single season, but if you go back and look at rookie drafts, and this has sort of shifted in my approach to Dynasty over the years, but if you go back and look at rookie drafts, starting with this year, right, where were you better off spending those 2nd, 3rd, 4th, depending how many rounds your rookie draft goes, picks? You were better off spending them on running backs, like you just mentioned, a guy like Cam Scatterbo. Even like think about like Devin Neal gave you some value, right? Like all those guys we talked about before the season when JSN. I rattled off like 27 or 28 names of these guys that could have fantasy value. A lot of them ended up doing it. The tight end class, we knew it was very strong. I got Harold Fannin Jr. in the 3rd round in some rookie drafts. There's still guys like, Terrence Ferguson and stuff that you could have gotten in the 3rd round. And you could be looking at him as a potential piece for you down the road, or quarterbacks like Tyler Shuck to bring him up again, right? You take the shots on those guys, especially in like a super flex format, because if they do end up hitting, and we knew Shuck might have an opportunity at some point this year to start, if they do end up hitting, they're giving you value where you could rattle off a lot of names, including ones that I was touting, like Jalen Royals on the Chiefs, right? Who you were looking at him as like a 3rd or 4th round rookie dynasty pick, and nothing comes of it. And we could cherry pick like that all day long. But I promise, if you go back and look at rookie drafts over the years recently, you were much better off chasing those running backs, chasing tight ends, even chasing quarterbacks, which also gets kind of tricky, but chasing quarterbacks that have a path to opportunity, like a guy like Tyler Shuck, versus some of those deeper receivers where, yes, every once in a while you get a Puka Nacua, but it is very rare, and it's tough to find those guys that become week in, week out starters for you. I would much rather have a very strong starting group of receivers and then just, one or two guys on the bench, or try to chase the waiver wire. Or remember, you can always trade, right? If you end up with an injury to your starting lineup, you can go out and try to trade for a piece that could fill in, as opposed to carrying all these deeper receivers that you're hanging on to. And I've been there too, Harmon. We've all done it. We've all held on to these guys. Adonai Mitchell is someone that's been on my bench for a long time. I finally got to start him in Dynasty a few times this year, to mixed results, of course. But yeah, you hang on to these guys that you really believe in. And it's almost like burning a roster spot when you have them for a few years, when you could have just been cycling through some of these deeper running backs or some of these guys at other positions that might have a better shot of producing and being a meaningful piece in your starting lineup at some point.
Yeah, I'm glad we talked about that, because that's something that I struggle with as a Dynasty player. So it's a good reminder. Next one we'll get into, we mentioned those superstar receivers. Tim Mansfield has a simple debate for us on this one. Hey, Matt, love the content. My submission for the debate is Puka Nacua versus JSN. Love a simple email there, Tim. We love that. Okay, so I'm assuming, Boone, these guys for you would be in contention to be wide receiver 1 overall in Dynasty. Jackson Smith-Njigba, Puka Nacua. Which one would you rather have, and why?
So Tim is not going to like this answer. I put out my updated Dynasty trade value charts on Monday. And they are tied in terms of their value. I have them both at the exact same value. So I kind of hedged my bet there a little bit. If I had to pick between them, it would be Puka. I mean, he led all wideouts in fantasy scoring this year. Like I said earlier, it was over a point ahead of second place, which was JSN. And then there was a big gap, about 2.5 points to third place. So these guys have kind of put themselves up, above everyone else. I think Jamar Chase is the other guy that could be put into that conversation. But they're both great. I don't spend a lot of time debating stuff like this. I just don't think there's a point to it. I think both these guys are awesome. If you had to pick between them, gun to my head, I'm going to go with Puka Nacua. I understand that, the Stafford situation could be scary. What happens after the season? Does Stafford retire? He's an older quarterback. Does there start to be some decline at some point with him? That's a little worrisome. But the fact that Puka went out there, he's shown now he is the focal point of that Sean McVay passing attack. That a guy like Devontae Adams shows up, puts up 14 touchdowns, and Puka still puts up a season like he put up this year. That's a great sign. I think McVay is going to find another quarterback. Even if Stafford leaves eventually, when that happens, they're going to have another quarterback there. Puka's fantastic. And maybe this is me having a little bit of concern still in the back of my mind about a Sam Darnold and whether he's going to be a great quarterback to be tied to for the long term here. But I don't know. For me, it's Puka, but it's Puka by a hair because, like I said, I kind of value them the exact same.
Same tier to me. Feel very similar about these two guys. But yeah, I love that you brought this point up. But producer Colin on the outline wrote in as you were talking counterpoint, who's going to be the Rams quarterback in 2 years. Counterpoint to the counterpoint, who's going to be the Seahawks quarterback in 2 years? How confident are you that it's going to be Sam Darnold? That's the thing that we think about these things in. Did you think 2 years ago that Sam Darnold was going to be the quarterback of the Seahawks? No. You thought it would just be Geno Smith, I guess forever. Things change really quickly in the NFL. And I promise you, Puka Nacua, I know we've only seen him with Matthew Stafford, so maybe he won't be, going nuclear, most efficient wide receiver in the NFL with another quarterback. But his role is very quarterback proof. He has the ability to produce with a different quarterback. I'm very, very confident. I can promise you that. And again, if we're breaking ties here, forget the quarterback part of it. Puka Nacua, as long as he gets off, internet streams, he'll be tied to Sean McVay forever. McVay will be there forever until he wants to do, the Mike Tomlin and peace out to TV, and Clint Kubiak, he's going to be gone. If not this coaching cycle, the next coaching cycle, he won't always be there. They'll have to shift through that. So that's part of the tiebreaker to me. Again, same tier, but I would give the edge to Puka Nacua as well. Last question here we'll take for the Dynasty Debates. And remember, fantasy mailbag at yahoosports.com if you want to get your Dynasty Debate on the show. This one comes in from Michael. Hey, Harmon, big fan. have we gotten in have really gotten into your content the last couple of seasons? What's the deal with Breece Hall? When he came into the scene, he seemed like the real deal before tearing his knee, then comes back and is the RB2 in full PPR, coming back from an ACL tear. 2024 felt like maybe there was an injury or something we weren't privy to that was driving down his production. 2025 had some moments, but also felt like more of the same. It seems like the perception of him, which is obviously important in terms of dynasty value, is down. Are Breece managers hosed if he somehow stays on the Jets in 2026? Can he be unlocked in a better ecosystem? See, told you I was a big fan of the show. And becomes the next running back in line to be freed by a change of scenery. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate the constant flow of content you provide while I'm paying my fat taxes on the treadmill. Hey, Michael, I every morning, now that it's too cold outside for me to walk in the morning, my wife won't let me. I'm paying my fat taxes on the treadmill too. And I'm telling you, if you're using Harmon content while you're on the treadmill, number one, you're a braver soldier than me. I got to watch a show. I can't be listening. The thought of listening to myself on the treadmill is horrendous. Okay. I need some visual. I listen to my books outside. But listening to my podcast, there is a lot of them, so you got plenty of time on that treadmill. But that's a lot to deal with here. Boone, I don't know about that. If you want to comment on treadmill fat taxes, or if whatever the hell I just said, or if you just like to talk about Breece Hall, that's probably what people want to hear about.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Breece Hall here. I'm not going to go anywhere near that one. I had a really hard time when I was doing the Dynasty Trade Value Chart update this week, really figuring out how I wanted to value him. And it's funny because before the season in the summer, I wrote an article about the players that were giving me the hardest time for ranking them in 2020 and 2025. And Breece Hall was one of the players I talked about in that column as well. And I think it's just because the situation in New York, right? It's been rough. I think he is a talented player. He overcame the injury. He managed to come back. He still put up top 10 numbers, like on a per game basis over a good stretch. But he's really kind of struggled to get back there in the last couple seasons. And I think it's because the offense itself has struggled. It's hard for him to put up big stats with the way that offense has gone. And now you look at him being a free agent, him, I think, wanting to get out of there. Will they let him go? Will they try to find a way? I mean, teams normally hold the cards, right? In terms of being able to franchise guys and keep guys in house. But hopefully this is kind of heading towards a divorce. Hopefully they let him leave. But then it even makes you wonder, like, who out there is excited to get him? Because based on what we heard around the deadline, people weren't really ponying up to get him, right? No one was offering that 3rd round pick. The rumors were that the Chiefs offered a 4th and no one was going higher than that. So which team out there is that excited to bring him in and make him the guy? I still believe, though, Harmon, that he does have that kind of potential where if he goes to the right spot, not necessarily like the Saquon Barkley going to the Eagles, but that kind of idea where if you put him in a really good offense, he could really emerge and flourish and be great for fantasy again. But there's a lot of ifs there. There's a lot of buts. There's a lot of question marks and caveats. And so I ended up kind of ranking him around RB18. You look at him as like that RB2, who I still do think has RB1 potential, but there's just a lot of risk involved if you're going out and trying to pick him up in Dynasty. But if I have him on my team, I'm holding through this offseason to see where he ends up, because his value could really skyrocket if he goes to the right place.
And I think for that reason, I wouldn't mind, sniffing around a trade offer for him as well. Now, there is no question the Jets could just franchise tag Breece Hall and say, hey, suck it up, pal. Like, you're coming to work for us this year, and that's that. But if he goes elsewhere, and I mean, God, the Chiefs, a 3rd round pick. Oh, was that really going to break your heart to give up a 3rd round pick versus a 4th round pick? Your drafts aren't that good anyways. Come on, Brett Veach, give up that 3rd round pick, baby. But yeah, I mean, if he's the Chiefs running back, in a couple of months from now, his dynasty value is going to be doing one of these, baby. It's going to be going up. Okay. Like the fake news market will be crazy for Breece Hall, but yeah, man, I really do like him as a potential addition. And I think most of it is ecosystem driven for Breece Hall. So I do like him as a bet in a dynasty format. He still looks like a good player to me. He still looks explosive. He still looks like he could be more of a weapon in the pass. I mean, almost 10 yards per catch this past year. So definitely a passing game weapon is Breece Hall.
I will say too, that maybe the more interesting conversation here for Dynasty, because there's so many unknowns with Breece Hall, is going out and trying to get them as throw-ins in a trade. Braylon Allen, who's like the forgotten man because he was injured most of this year. Isaiah Davis. Like, if you can get those guys as throw-ins and trades, there's a non-zero chance that they end up being the Jets starter next year. So I'd be looking to do that. Again, not targeting them specifically if you can avoid it, but if you're making a deal with the manager who has one of those guys, just get them to throw that guy in the deal. I guarantee they won't care about that. That won't be something that makes them, change their mind on the deal as a whole. And then you have them on your bench, and they're another one of those guys that at least have a path to potentially returning value for you.
That's a good call. Yeah, I mean, there's a chance they could add somebody in the NFL draft, but why not for cheap?
Of course.
Those players you could add, because Braylon Hall was a guy. Braylon Allen was a player we were really excited about potentially getting some opportunity in the preseason. Yeah, ecosystem and opportunity is everything at running back, and if you can buy those guys in Dynasty, you can definitely do that. So shout out to you, Michael. You can absolutely, while you're paying those fat taxes on the treadmill, walking outside is fine in the cold. I'm not a baby about the cold. I mean, I did live in LA for like 10 years, so I am a little bit of a baby about the cold still. But if you got the heated garage, as I do, shout out to me. Just walk on the treadmill like Michael does, okay? So everybody can just relax. Michael can make his dynasty trades while he's on the treadmill as opposed to listening to more of my blabbering.